And good evening. Good evening. It is time. What time is that? It is 6 o'clock. So we are here for the Strive Alumni Town Hall. I am Verna Hamilton. And of course, we have Terrence Byerson. And Terrence is going to join us a little later. But I wanted to start off this evening, first of all, welcoming all of you to give you a few housekeeping details. I know you see it, right? You see my background, it says Strive Alumni Town Hall. We have been doing this monthly broadcast for actually this makes 1 year. And so let me bring in my co-host, Terrence.
Good evening, everyone. Good for y'all to be here. Actually, I'm traveling on route somewhere, but I will be on the call listening. This is our, like Verna said, is the anniversary of our first year anniversary of doing these formats of these town halls, and it's great that you guys are here. So I'm going to give the mic to Verna right now, so I can be muted.
Great. So as you can see, we are on the move. We are everywhere. I want you to feel free to chime in on the chat. The chat is open and live. So I want to make sure that, let me see who's on right now. So I'm going to give a shout out to Strive New York, to Strive Atlanta, to Strive Philadelphia, to Strive San Diego, Strive Baltimore. I see you. I see you, Strive Yonkers, Strive Westchester, Strive Maine. Woo. You didn't know the Strive was all over like that, right? So let's get to it. I'm just going to make sure all of you are in the chat. And so from time to time, feel free to join in with the chat. One of the things that I wanted to make sure that you knew about, and throughout the entire presentation, and I'm going to get to our guest tonight because I'm really excited, but one of the things that you need to know is that we continue to have virtual job club every Tuesday and Thursday at 10 a.m. and self-directed job search on Fridays at 10. So how do you get to that, you ask? I'm glad you asked. You would go to www.strive.org/remote. And once you get there, you're going to click on Job Club. Now, the purpose of Job Club, it's regardless of whether you currently have a position and you're looking to advance, or you are currently searching and you want to get a head start. You may have been furloughed during the pandemic and you're collecting benefits right now, yet you want to get an idea of what the market is looking like. I would encourage you to take advantage of our business development team, and you had a chance to hear more about them in March during that town hall, but check us out. Let us hear from you. The second thing is to make sure that you're on our mailing list for the weekly alumni newsletter. Beginning July 6th, we have a summer literacy where your youth, if they read a book and they make a presentation, they can earn a whole pizza pie. And so you can contact our colleague Martha Marquez at mmarquez@strive.org for that information. Okay. So without further ado, I am going to introduce the panelists for tonight's town hall. And the first person I'm going to add to the chat is Michelle Matthews. Michelle and our regional vice president, Terrence Hickman, are with Primerica. And so tonight, our conversation is to get some clarity and some real information from real people around investing in ourselves. What does that look like? As well as building futures for our families. And for those of you that have participated in our financial journey, and I'm giving a wave to Nicole King and Jason and Russ at JP Morgan Chase, one of the things that we have, as well as CJ, Clarence J, we've been having discussions around financial resiliency and financial inclusion. What do I mean when I say that? We have learned that, and we've experienced that there are 4 ways that people build ways to withstand financial shocks. Financial emergencies come, but if people don't have things in place, say savings, a checking account, credit comes into that. We've been talking about entrepreneurship. We've been talking about investing. Should I go? Where do I start? But the big black box that we really haven't spoken to until this point is around insurance. So I'm going to ask Terrence. Terrence, yes. You're this big regional vice president of Primerica. You weren't always this money maker, mover, shaker. How did you come to insurance?
All right, I appreciate you asking that question, Verna. And I truly thank you for having myself and Michelle. We thank you and Terrence for what you guys are doing and your mission and how you are impacting the community. So we thank you for thinking of us and allowing us to be here today. But I grew up in a single parent household in South Jersey. Verna, a lot of my, you're familiar with my family. And I ended up playing basketball, and because that was my thing. I had a lot of my homies that were into different things, and basketball kind of kept me focused, right? So I ended up getting a kind of a partial scholarship grant to Arcadia University in Philadelphia. So I'm in Philadelphia playing ball, Verna, trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I kind of figured out I wasn't going to make it to the NBA because I wanted to be like Allen Iverson, but I figured out that might not happen, right? So
wait a minute, about how tall are you, Terrence? Just checking.
You're going to laugh, Verna. I'm 5'.
No. All right. But so long as you came to that realization. But you were nice with it because you got a scholarship. Okay.
Yeah, it was nice, Verna. But
okay.
Next level, some other things come into play, right? Everybody's a lot taller, a lot stronger. So I started to realize I got to do something different. So I really got attracted to Black wealth and creating wealth in the community. I got introduced to a book by Kwanzaa Kajufu called Black Economics, because I realized, Verna, I saw that some of my friends went on to the NBA, and I saw, them increase their income and their wealth. And I said, man, what are other ways in the Black community that we can obtain wealth, or that we can learn about financial literacy? Because no matter what passion or profession we go into, we're going to have to understand about money. So a guy named Melvin Calhoun put that book in my hand, Black Economics. I was 21-year-old, just reading that book and said, man, I got to get this stuff down. I want to, change my family future moving forward. So I got real into it. Then I got introduced to a brother named Melvin Calhoun Jr. That I could relate to. He came from the same environment I came from and had his own office as a broker up the street from Arcadia University. And
okay, now pause right there.
Yes.
Because you mentioned Melvin Calhoun, and you mentioned Melvin Calhoun Jr.
Yes.
How did you first meet Melvin Calhoun, was he a mentor?
He became a mentor, Verna. So what ended up occurring is a guy I used to play basketball with. Brother used to come with a suit on, look very sharp. We started to talk about, what I was going to do after college, and what my future goals were. And he said, I got to connect you to this brother that has an office up the street, Melvin Calhoun Jr. He's into finance. You're reading the Black Economics book. He's into finance. That's what he does. So
so you took your book to the basketball court.
Yeah, Verna, I was reading the book. I had it in my backpack. So I took the book with me to the basketball court. If I lost the game, Verna, I'm sitting on the sidelines, I'm reading Black Economics.
Okay, I see. And so someone noticed what you were reading, and that's how the connection was made.
Yes, I think he saw that there was something a little different in me sitting there and reading, Black Economics versus doing something else. And he connected me to Melvin. So he invited me to an open house they were having, a seminar. And that's why I met Melvin Calhoun Jr. Melvin Calhoun Jr. was really into Black Economics, Kwanzaa Kinjufu already. I didn't know this, right? So we talked the same language, but he kind of came into my life, Verna, not just from a... So he invited me to an open house they were having, a seminar. Mentor as well. That's why I met Melvin Calhoun. Okay, so he came into my life in, from a just kind of like a father figure, to be honest with you, and took me under his wing just as a young brother, having a male mentor that looked like me that I could relate to, to kind of steer me as a young brother, and then it kind of evolved into him teaching me about finance, business, becoming a broker, and things like that.
I mean, that's fascinating, because when we usually talk about mentorship, we tend to think of structured relationships, whereas what you just described was very organic.
Yes.
You had a conversation, which turned into a connection, which turned from a connection turned into an introduction, and that became a network. So, and you were 21.
Yes.
And you hadn't thought about owning your own business. Your business was all about basketball.
100%, Verna.
Okay, I'm just making sure I'm tracking as I'm checking this chat. And so this process teaching you about finance, was that a 4-week, a 1 month? What did that look like? Years?
Yeah, honestly, Verna, it was years, because it was kind of, for me, it was kind of started from scratch. I had no background in finance, didn't know anything about it, right? So he would tell me when they would have meetings and seminars and trainings, even for clients, and I would literally put it in my schedule to make sure when I got out of basketball practice, I took my shower. I had one suit, Verna, the suit that I wore for Easter every year. So I put my Easter suit on, Verna, and I went down, because I had the baggy jeans and Timberlands and
listen. Wait, what you forgot to mention, you were in Brooklyn though, right? By this time?
At that time, I went to college in Philadelphia, and then I moved to Brooklyn after that.
Oh, so I know you had on your baggy jeans and Tim. Shout out Philadelphia. We see you, strive Philadelphia.
Shout out to Philly. I was in West Oak Lane, so shout out to Philly.
Oh,
Philly's my second home.
It's a wonderful place, but I'm gonna stay on topic. So you were mentored by this gentleman. Were you discussing all aspects of finance, or at what point did you decide to go into insurance, and what was it about insurance that attracted you?
That's a great question. So we were covering all aspects of finance. But what actually occurred is, in the process of him kind of taking me under his wing and mentoring me, he said, man, you should consider getting a license in the insurance industry. I think he saw my passion with our community, just the financial literacy, everything I learned from those books, Verna. I was like so hungry to share with people, and to instigate conversations. I used to be on campus and have people like in a kind of like a meeting and just talking to them about Black economics. Kind of like it wasn't on no schedule, Verna, you know, anything like that. But we would be in the dorm and they would have a room where we could meet at. And I get off,
Oh,
hey, bro, come in here. You know, and you got to stay focused. It's what we need to talk about, right? Because, you know, I realized that the things that we were focused on weren't really that important compared to what was in Black economics, in my opinion, at that time, right? So I really got inspired to do that. Any young brother or young sister that I saw on campus, I would pull them to the side. Hey, look, we need to talk about this. Were you aware of this? Were you aware of that? Whatever Mel was pouring into me, I tried to make sure I share with other people. So then he encouraged me to get my licenses. At the time, I was a resident in the state of New Jersey. So I actually had to attend, you know, my home address was still New Jersey. So I actually had to attend the class in New Jersey. So on the weekend, at that time, Verna, they had a 20-hour class for 2 weekends. So it was from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. And you would get like an hour for lunch. So on Saturdays, I would go back to New Jersey to go to the class. And then I took it on Sunday and then the following Saturday and Sunday. And then I took my test. And when I was 22, I got my life insurance license.
now it's called a life insurance license.
Life insurance producer's license.
Life insurance producer's license. And this is where I'm going to bring in Michelle because now I'm going somewhere. Now see, this is where it gets interesting. So I have one hand on the live chat, one eye on the live chat, one eye on the screen talking to all of you, because as we're having this discussion, our audience is listening. And I see you, Cecilia. Thank you, Cecilia. And they are sending us questions and feed. So this is not just us having the conversation. So one of the reasons why I definitely wanted Michelle to be part of this discussion is because money happens to us all. And it doesn't matter how you come to a certain period, your paths intersect at different points. And so, Michelle, you had a whole other career prior to starting your business. So if you would just talk a little bit about what you did prior to now and how you and Terrence connected, because just like one day Terrence was on the basketball court reading Black economics, and I'm going to put the book. I know I see you guys. I'm gonna put the book in the chat so you can read it for yourself. And I should say that we're sharing information. Hopefully there'll be something that you decide to look into for yourself and pursue further, but by no shape, form, or fashion is Strive advocating a product, a service. This is for informational purposes only. This is my official disclaimer, so you will not try to hold Strive, myself, or any of our guests liable. Okay, so with that, Michelle, go ahead.
Okay, Verna, I just want to thank you so much for including myself and Terrence part of this town hall conversation. You're right. I am a retired social worker. I had worked in child protection and family services for 30 years in New Jersey. I was in a management position. I felt that 30 years was a long time. So I ended up retiring early, believe it or not, at 30 years. It was an early retirement because I had other obligations. I had other concerns. I was taking care of my mother, who had dementia, and I was unable to service my mom and work at the same time. So I had to step away and say goodbye to that career, which I did love, because I believe I'm a social worker. I'm a social worker, I think, in my heart, and I think I'll always be a social worker. But I think for me, giving people education so they can grow and move forward. So we can go ahead and they can move forward was always important for me. It was always a desire and a passion for me. So with that, I ended up taking care of my mother. At 52, I retired. My mother had dementia and she had since passed 2 years after that. Well, she passed 2 years ago, I'm sorry. So, but what happened was we all lived through this pandemic, right? And I was seeing things happening during this pandemic. And what I was really, really seeing most of all is that our community was suffering the most from this pandemic, our Black and Brown communities. And when our Black and Brown communities ended up having a loss, a personal loss, they were not prepared. They were not prepared for what they needed to do to meet that particular need. So I'm seeing this and I'm seeing this. And then I realized, look, I need more insurance myself. So I reached out to Terrence, and I will explain to you our relationship. Terrence and I have known each other. I knew him before he knew me. I babysat Terrence. Our families are very, very close. I'm very, very close to his godmother. And I knew Terrence from a little boy, and he's always been a businessman. As long as I've known him, he's always selling candy or selling this or selling that. And when they would come to that, I'm like, oh gosh, here comes Terrence. Let me get my pocketbook, But he's always been a focused young man, even from a little boy. So when I knew that he was in the business of insurance and investments, we reached out to him, my husband and I, because we wanted to do some investments, some type of looking towards the future is what we wanted to do. So we solicited Terrence's help back in 2008. But when the pandemic hit, I realized I needed more insurance. So I reached back out to Terrence because he was part of a program and part of an agency that I believed in. I believed them to be worthy and had integrity in their business. I really believed that they could make a difference in people's lives, So I trusted Terrence. I trusted his knowledge. I trusted with all the growth that he has come to this point. So I knew that if I called him, he would steer me in the right direction. Okay. So that's what we did. We had a conversation. I told him what I needed. He told me what would be in my best interest. And then he asked the question. He said, do you think you might want to do this? And it's so funny, Verna, because I had just been praying about doing something different. My mother was gone. When you care for someone, so much of you is poured into that person that it takes a while for you to regroup and figure out just who you are. And I realized that I needed to do something. I needed something to do, but I wanted to do something that was going to count, that was going to make a difference, that was on my own terms, and that I was able to control. Okay, because I was tired for 30 years of working for someone else. I wanted to be able to work for myself. And that was my prayer. And it's funny, when you ask God for something, you got to be careful because he listens. Okay. So when he asked me the question, I said quickly to myself, Lord, is this how you're going to answer my prayer right now? Is this what you want me to do? I said, Terrence, I don't know. I don't know finance. He said, just come to a meeting. Just come to a meeting, and he was persistent about it, and I love him for it. But I ended up going to a meeting.
Well, pause there.
Yes.
Terrence.
Yes.
Terrence, your use of your network, you reached out to people that used to babysit you?
Yes.
So was this when you were starting a business, when you were?
Yes, this was just when I was getting started. Michelle and Tony kind of gave me a shot when I was really, really rough around the edges in the beginning, Verna. And I truly valued and appreciated that. Because it's kind of
Okay.
like.
So I'm going to pause so that people know that that was then and this is now. How long have you been in business?
I got licensed in March of 2005. I opened up my own office in August of 2008. So
Okay.
full-time broker since August of 2008.
So more than 10 years at this point.
Yes.
And you are regional vice president because you are in charge of how many offices at this point?
2 offices and 39 agents.
Okay. Just, just one, just for the folks that are watching, just want to make sure that they know that you're not new to this. We're talking about the beginning because sometimes for those alums who went through our entrepreneurship class with Lucinda Cross, and yes, we build upon previous subjects from month to month. Sometimes the small beginnings, you wonder, is this making sense? It's not glamorous in the beginning.
No.
Of any business.
Not at all.
It can be downright depressing sometimes. Yet, what we're trying to encourage those of you who have aspirations of being an entrepreneur, of starting a business, of actually telling you what it is like for real, rather than give the impression that you're just going to have this one idea and everybody's going to come and you're going to live happily ever after. What we're talking about, again, the theme tonight is investing in yourself. So there are 2 things that, well, actually there are several things. What I've heard so far, I know you all love when I do the recap. So far, the first investment in yourself I heard was reading.
Mm-hmm.
Reading books, reading things that you don't know that much about, but you're interested in. So I heard Black Economics by Dr. Chukwanza Kunjufu because there was an interest in community building and learning more about finance. And that book was recommended by a mentor. That's another investment, finding and cultivating a mentor. Another investment is actually working in a field for 30 years, working in a passion and becoming clear about who you are. These are just some investments. Another investment is making sure that you get 8 hours of sleep, but that's not tonight's topic, but I'm going to stick to the investing in yourself. Again, if you have an interest, you don't necessarily have to wait for someone to tap you on your shoulder and say, find out more about this. The common thread that I'm hearing is curiosity, question, looking for information.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say that again. Curiosity, I wonder, question, getting additional information. So with that, I'm going to put this on the table because there is so much confusion around insurance. Other than an experience with insurance, Michelle, you alluded to it. The times that we tend to think about insurance most is when it's time to bury someone. But that's not the only thing that insurance is used for. I also learned that insurance is used as a method to build wealth, but that's not something that we often talk about. So
Right.
Between the 2 of you, could you discuss why insurance and why do people need insurance, or why should people just help the people, help me break it down like I'm a 5-year-old.
Absolutely. So I can give you a personal experience that really caused me to become very passionate. I had an aunt that passed away, Verna, and she had 8 children, believe it or not. and they kind of all got split up, my cousins, to different family members. One of the reasons was she passed away without life insurance. Then I had a cousin that passed away, a younger cousin. So my cousin's daughter passed away from a rare form of cancer. And I, it kind of raised the importance level of having life insurance on everyone, no matter how young the person is, right? So I saw that in my own family. And I know a lot of the viewers today can probably relate, or, maybe know somebody, if not personally, somebody that knows somebody that passed away without life insurance, and the financial devastation that can have on a family. So that was one of the things. Traditionally, life insurance is viewed as a means of paying for a funeral. If you remember back in the day, Verna, you used to have the agent come in, right, and collect the premium from each household, and send it into the company back in the day, right, and that would pay for the funeral.
I'm not that old. I'm not that old. That would be.
Sorry, Verna. So. So they used to say back in the day, make sure you got some insurance. That's how they said it, Michelle, some insurance. Got some insurance, right? So it would go towards paying off a funeral. What I've learned through studying Verna and studying wealth building and things like that is insurance can be used to transfer wealth, right? Master P, I grew up listening to him and learning a lot from his entrepreneurial ventures and things like that. He got his record label started when his grandfather died and left life insurance proceeds to him. So life insurance proceeds.
Wait. Say that again. That's how Master P did it?
Yes, he started his record label because his grandfather died and left him as the beneficiary of a life insurance policy. And that founded No Limit Records.
Okay.
So life insurance can be used in the form of seed capital. A lot of times we may have kids and grandkids that have ideas and things of that nature, and it could be used as a family fund to fund businesses per se, right? So that's what I learned. Another thing I learned is income protection. And here's what I mean by that. When we have children that are dependent upon us, what happens is if the mother or father is taken out the picture, the kids are not in a position where they can maintain that lifestyle. So we got to kind of figure out, what does it take to cover rent? What does it take to cover, the bills, the electric, the food, to make sure that nothing changes with this lifestyle? And if we can, we got to get it. We try to put a plan in place where we can help those kids be financially stable until they're at least of age, Verna, where they can start taking care of themselves. Because like I said, that situation in my family really hit home for me. But I find that a lot of life insurance policies are just used for a funeral. By the way, disclosure statement, it's better to have something versus having nothing. Step one, we got to get enough so it's not a financial burden on someone. We got to find something that's economically affordable. Even if it's $20 a month or $25 a month, we can get something. The next level up would be to say, all right, so I got a 9-year-old, I got a 15-year-old. If something happens to daddy, they still need to be able to live this lifestyle. So I got to figure out whoever's going to take care of them, how to leave enough to that person because they're not of age, so that nothing will change with their lifestyle. So it's not, because it wouldn't necessarily be fair to me to leave a financial burden on another person, because it's really my responsibility. So that will be the next level up, Verna, having enough that can create a level of financial comfort for the dependent kids until they're of age where they can take care of themselves. The third level would be talking about generational wealth, leaving a fund in place that could create an estate where we can put a will in place and say, hey, look, 2 to 3 generations from now, you're only to live off of the interest off of this money. You're not necessarily to touch the principal. You just live off of the interest. So that's the higher level, in terms of wealth creation. But we got to start where we're at. That's the key. We got to start where we're at.
Okay, so I'm going to pause to bring in some of the comments from the chat. We have a hi, Terrence and Michelle, still helping people, Michelle, in another capacity. And then somebody said, yes, it's so important. Okay. Wow. Tell you. So you're not just talking to me to say all that.
Right.
So to go back to the step one, because usually people don't hear of being able to protect themselves and or their families for $20, $25 a month. And there's usually some residual thoughts that having an insurance policy is a whole lot of money.
Right.
And it's complicated and there's a lot of paperwork and ain't nobody got time for that. Yeah, I said that. So what would you say to someone who is making $15 an hour, working maybe 35, 40 hours a week? How do they get started?
That's an awesome question, Verna. I would say what they can do is set aside $10 to $15 of pay to put aside for life insurance. The application process when applying for life insurance, the insurance company is going to want to do a background check on your health. We also try to figure out your budget, right? That's why I said $10 to $15 a pay. You don't have to start with a lot. But like I said, getting started is one of the keys. Just getting started. Down the line, you can always increase and get more.
Right.
It's a simple process. You can do it via Zoom now, Verna, which is pretty cool. This whole pandemic has really brought Zoom to the forefront. You can do it over Zoom. And it usually takes 10 to 15 minutes to actually do the application. So, it doesn't take that long. And the process is pretty simple. If you're not doing a huge amount of coverage, generally speaking, just remember the higher amount of insurance that you apply for, the more questions, the more investigation the company's going to ask for. But just kind of starting out with a basic plan, 10 to 15 minutes, 20 to 30 bucks a month will get you started right on Zoom. You ain't got to leave your house nowadays, Verna. You do it right from the crib.
Yeah, but you got to have Wi-Fi or phone coverage.
That's true. That's true. Now you can do it on the phone, but my new term, Verna, is coverage from the crib. That's my new
Coverage
term.
from the crib. Okay. All right. I'm not going to steal it, but you heard it here first on the Strive Alumni Town Hall. Coverage from the crib. So speaking of the crib, talk about, because by now everybody Googled you, and talk about your office that you have in Brooklyn and why Brooklyn and how Brooklyn and hey Brooklyn, but talk about it.
Yes, I had moved to Brooklyn in 2013. I love Brooklyn, by the way. I feel at home in Brooklyn, especially Harlem too, Verna. I got love for Harlem. Brooklyn's home.
I was about to say, don't make Terrence come after you.
I just feel at home. I mean, when I used to visit Harlem like on the weekends and stuff like that and enjoy myself. But I just love the city. I love Brooklyn. I love working with our folks. I lived in Flatbush, office in Flatbush. Dealt with a lot of the Caribbean population, in Flatbush, African American population, minority population. So I just get a joy out of it, Verna. I love going down Cortellu and Flatbush Ave, and I just love what we do. Also find out that it's really weird in the financial services industry where sometimes I feel like a lot of companies in the financial services industry are in our communities, talking to our folks at the level that they should be. So that's a focus of mine, and Michelle, to make sure we're in our communities, talking to the folks, that look like you and me, so that's what I enjoy doing. I feel like I'm having a level of impact on Michelle as well, and it gives us a sense of purpose.
What are some of the common questions that you get, say for someone who's new to insurance in your Brooklyn office? What are some of the questions that, for someone who doesn't know what questions to ask, what are some questions that we should ask when selecting an insurance
That is
plan?
a good question. One question, Verna, you want to make sure you ask How soon is the coverage in force? Because you want to make sure that you're paying for something where when you leave that, when you get that policy that, hey, if something happens to me, the conditions in which the company will pay the death benefit. So that's a question that you want to ask the insurance person. How soon am I covered? Are there any provisions that would prevent them from paying the death benefit? So that's very, very important. You want to ask if the policy is increasing. Was my payment level or is it increasing? Will it go up? Right? That's something that.
Wait a minute. Payment level.
Okay. Are my payments going to be the same?
Okay. See.
Yes,
I see your chat. I see your chat. So that's known as payment level. But
Yeah,
translation, are my payments going to go up over time?
You got it, Verna. Am I in a level, meaning the payment stay the same, or is next month the payment going to be higher than it was this month?
Okay. And what is the difference between term and whole life or permanent insurance, and why should we care?
Okay, all right. So I'm gonna break it down as simple as possible because there's a lot of different philosophies when it comes to life insurance. But what I'm going to do, Verna, is just explain whole life, explain term, but it'll give the audience the ability to kind of figure out what works for them. When you have a whole life insurance, okay, whole life insurance is called permanent insurance. It's technically the most expensive type of life insurance to have. So there's less coverage, but it's a higher premium. One of the reasons that it's a higher premium is because there's a savings account included with the policy called a cash value account. So if you just took the words cash value and put savings account, it'd be the same thing.
And for clarity, premium is the amount of money you pay every.
You got it. The amount of money. Yeah. So in insurance terminology or insurance language, premium equals payment. And premium equals payment. Yes, great question. With a whole life policy, some of the features that are sold with the whole life policy is the fact that a person can accumulate money in the savings account within the policy down the line. Not right away. It's usually 3 to 5 years from having a policy, but down the line they can borrow money from the policy. Okay. And God forbid something happens, whatever the death benefit is paid out to the beneficiary. Now, something that is important to know with a whole life policy is, you're paying into the policy, and when it comes to borrowing, you are borrowing your own money. When you borrow from the policy, if something were to happen to you, it does reduce the death benefit. So I'll give you an example, Verna. If I had $100,000 policy and I had $20,000 in my savings in the policy, if I were to remove that $20,000 and take it for myself, if something happened to me, my family would get $80,000. So it would reduce the amount that's paid out to the family. That happens a lot of times in our communities where people have policies and the beneficiaries or the kids or the spouse thinks they're getting a certain amount and they get less because along the way, the person borrowed from the policy and did not pay back what they borrowed to the policy. So that happens all the time, so you got to be mindful of that. And the last thing is with the savings account in the policy, it traditionally grows similar to like a savings account, or, it doesn't really grow, tremendously, over time. It's kind of like just, grow 1, 2, 3% per year in interest. When you have a term policy is just pure insurance. So it's kind of like the insurance you may have on your car or the insurance you may have on your home. There's no savings account attached to it. It's just insurance. As a result, the premium it would be less than a whole life policy because you're only paying for insurance. You're not paying for a savings account. Term generally is for a period of time. There's 35-year term, 30-year term, 25-year term. So when you get term insurance, you want to look at the period of time of the policy. Now, in term policies, when you get to the end of the term that you're covered, usually the company offers you an option of extending the policy and extending the coverage. Okay. A couple philosophies behind term insurance is a lot of people will get it because they'll have it while their kids are very, very young. So let's say, Verna, I have a 9-year-old, for example, and I have a 30-year term policy. That 30-year amount of coverage that would be left to my kids to pay off bills and things like that, that'll cover until my 9-year-old is now 39 years old. So at 39, the child being 39 years old now, an adult, I may not have a need for as much life insurance because now my kids are independent and kind of doing their own thing, you know? And if I do have a need for it, I may not need as much coverage because my responsibilities have changed over time. If I had a mortgage during that 30 years, the mortgage is a lot lower now. Maybe I had it in the beginning so that it would pay off the mortgage if something happened to me so that the kids wouldn't be left with the mortgage. But 30 years later, the mortgage is a lot lower. You know, a lot of times it's paid off in 30 years, that kind of thing. And the kids become independent. The second thing we mentioned is when we recommend a term policy, we also show clients that there are areas that you can invest. I'm not going to go into specifics on that, but get a better rate of return over time than if you were to save the money in a cash value policy. So you can have a term policy and invest coincidentally invest with the term policy so that over time you still have savings that you can reach out and withdraw if you need to. The money begins accumulating and the money grows a lot better than if it were in a cash value of a whole life policy.
So you're really combining two different products to have the effect of a whole life. Because let me make sure that I'm following you.
Yes.
Because you said with a whole life insurance policy, whole life of permanent,
Yes.
it's usually a higher payment, a higher premium.
Right.
And that is because it has a savings investment component with it.
Yes.
And then you have a term, which is straight insurance for a period of time, but you can combine it with an investment account to have the same effect. Am I following you?
100%, Verna. So you got
Wait a minute.
you're on it, Verna. You got
Amy?
You got it.
We believe in separating insurance from investing. So you got a term plan and you have a separate investment. However, you're paying them at the same time, Verna. But because the investment is separate from the term plan, you don't have to borrow from it. You can take from it. It doesn't affect your death benefit. If you take money out of it, you ain't got to worry about your death benefit going down. You know, what your family going to get decreasing.
Okay.
The third thing is we can put it in accounts that can obtain a better rate of return over time, based on the market, of course, in comparison when the limited, savings of a cash value policy. So it gives us more options. So it's kind of like we can take the meat and leave the bones, by doing it that way.
So Michelle.
Yes.
What is it about, you mentioned that it's attractive to you as far as working for yourself, having something to do. How do you take your previous experience as a social worker and apply it to talking to individuals about insurance now?
Great question. Being a social worker is giving information, providing information so you can have a better outcome. That's basically what a social worker does. They meet you where you are. They gather information. They give you options for you to have a better outcome. So that is exactly what I do for Primerica. When I reach our Black and Brown communities, it's all about education. It's all about giving them options, because with education, there's power in knowledge, and I think that for so long, our communities were not given that option to even know what it was like to have a level playing field, because no one was telling us those things. No one was telling us how to invest. No one was coming out and reaching out to us, letting us know you don't need a whole lot of money to invest. No one was telling our communities that generational wealth starts with life insurance. Okay. You don't have to have a whole lot of money to build a future. And so with those type of concepts that we provide with Primerica are the things that will empower you. I'm all about empowerment. I'm all about advocating, and I'm all about having our community grow and move forward. And without that information, we can't do that. And as I began to learn, and as I began to read, and as I began to sit in on different classes, and as I was studying for my license, I realized there was a whole lot I was never taught, never knew. And I'm not saying that it's not a judgment. You know, I don't pass judgment on anyone. I just think people are doing the best that they can with what the information that they have. But how much better could we be if we just had a fraction of the information that would help us move forward? You know, so being a social worker is about helping and advocating and empowering. So yes, I'm doing social work, but I'm also helping them to make a real difference that you can see, that build upon a future. Okay, yes, I did protection and I did safety for children and families. Okay, so what's the next step? Moving forward to a future that can help build for legacies to come. You know, and I think that so much has been taken from our Black and Brown communities as far as legacy, as far as culture, as far as just our own dignity, you know, and if we can just make a small difference in our community by empowering them with the tools that they need to build a future, not just for themselves, to be independent and in control of their future. Yes, okay, you have a policy. And a lot of times I've come into contact with families and clients that say, well, I have a policy on my job, but it doesn't belong to you. It doesn't belong to you. It belongs to the company. Don't you want to have control over something that you own? You become the owner of your policy. You become the owner and dictate where your money goes. That's why we like to help clients invest, as well as having them secured with insurance. When you invest, you build a future. You build a future. And so that's why it's so important for me to not just tell them about the insurance piece, but the investment piece, because that's where your future is. You know, and if you want to take money out of an account that's yours, that's your empowerment piece. You know, so it's all about empowering and moving forward to a future that's going to build a legacy. So for me, it's the same thing, Verna. I mean, I'm doing the same thing, and I'm finding that out as I learn the business. I'm doing the same thing, but we're taking it up a notch because I'm helping them build a future and a legacy. And that to me is key. So
Awesome. So with that, what is one thing, if because we have about 7 minutes left, and I'm looking at the chat and I'm seeing where they're saying awesome and yes. So I get the impression that people are learning something tonight. Yay. and I want to know from each of you, what is one thing that if they don't do anything else, what is one thing that they should do after this live stream?
That is all. Go ahead, Michelle.
okay, one thing they should do.
One thing
is to review what they have and find out what they need to move forward. What is it that they need to move forward? And that's something that's what we do. So they need to call me. But I really think they need to look at what they have and look at what they want, because what you have and what you want are two different things. Okay, so look at where you want to be and look at where you are.
And for those of you wondering, I'm going to have contact information in our next alumni newsletter, our weekly newsletter.
Mhm.
Thank you, Michelle. What's one thing other than what Michelle said, Terrence?
I would say just definitely investing in the education that you said earlier, Verna. I'd recommend everybody go out and get that book, Black Economics by Kawanza Kunjufu, because
Oh, that's right. I said I was going to put that in the chat. Excuse me. Let me do that right now.
definitely there's a couple books. You know, The Millionaire Next Door is a good book. Dave Ramsey has a
The
couple.
Millionaire Next Door as well.
Yes, that's a good book. That's a book, book about building wealth. But also because a lot of times we're very consumer driven versus asset driven, like you were saying, Verna, where we kind of like growing up, Verna, I wanted the Timberland boots, the Nike, and everything. But then I realized, I said, Terrence, man, why don't you invest in those companies? Why don't you think differently when it comes to that, right? Because I wanted to be like the rappers. But then I realized that I need to take my money and put it places that one will impact my family, especially if God forbid something happens to me, but also that will grow over time. So reading those books helps shift my mindset. And the third thing I would say, Verna, is the people that they're hanging around. Hey, get around some people that are into things like that. That changed me and what happened with my mindset, Verna, by being around Melvin County, finding a mentor that was an expert in that particular area.
See, you're going to fool around and I'm going to have you start an insurance club. See, so I'm putting in recommended book to read, Black Economics, Solutions for Economic and Community Empowerment by Dr. Shawanza Kunjufu.
That's right.
And you also recommended
The Millionaire Next Door.
Millionaire Next Door. And for those of you that have already read it, that means that it's time to read it again. Because sometimes books that you haven't read, every time you read them, you get more nuggets and it meets you where you are at any given point in time. Oh, somebody said that would be great in Insurance Club. Listen. Okay. I'm also going to put now, don't play with me if you all want to have an insurance club. We currently have our asset building group. And so we're adding insurance as one of the topics. That's right. I should be looking this way. I'm looking at my phone talking to the chat. I should be looking at you. We have the asset building club where we not only talk about insurance, we talk about budget.
Wow.
We talk about all things money. We talk about those who are still using monthly money orders and check cashing places, those who have a distrust of financial institutions with reason. But what we are about with the Strive Alumni Association is finding affordable, trustworthy partnerships so that you can get the resources and connections and access that you need. So I have to thank Michelle Matthews and Terrence Hickman of Primerica for so generously sharing their expertise, their wisdom, their experiences, because for all that they shared, just like anything else, you don't know the story behind the story. You hear how Terrence started back in 2008, and here we are nearly 13 years later, and he has 2 locations. But you also heard him say that as 21, he was reading and pulling people and sharing information. You heard from Michelle how she spent 30 years devoted to protecting, helping people come to better outcomes, meeting them where they are, meeting them at the point of their most emotional, to make sure that they ended up better on the other side. And I particularly wanted them to come into the Strive Alumni Town Hall because at the end of the day, the Strive Alumni Association is about meeting you where you are. Terrence Byerson and I are here to meet you where you are, reach out to us. But until the next month, we want to hear from you. We're here for you. Again, it's 7 o'clock. Tomorrow is Thursday. There'll be virtual job club. The business development team is here to hear your career aspirations, to find out what skills you have, and to get you where you're trying to go. So tomorrow at 10, that's happening. But for right now, until next month, this has been the Strive Alumni Town Hall. Again, I'm Verna Hamilton, wishing you and yours a most fabulously restful and cool and productive 4th of July weekend. Until next month, thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Terrence. And I am saying good night to everybody. Bye-bye.
Good night. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having us.
You're welcome. Be well, everybody.